You're in a group conversation. Everyone's laughing at a joke, but you got the joke 3 sentences before the punchline, and now you're 3 topics ahead, wondering where this conversation is actually going, while simultaneously feeling completely disconnected from everyone in the room. This isn't social anxiety. This is what happens when your brain processes information at a frequency most people don't operate on. People with high IQ, we're talking 130 and above, roughly the top 2.5% of the population, don't just think faster, they experience reality differently. And one of the most documented but least talked about consequences is profound loneliness. Not the loneliness of being alone, the loneliness of being surrounded by people and still feeling like nobody's operating on your wavelength. Studies tracking high IQ adults found they're statistically more likely to experience both social and emotional loneliness compared to average IQ populations. Social loneliness, meaning not enough people around, and emotional loneliness, meaning the people around them don't provide the depth of connection they need. Even when they have friends, the relationships often feel surface level, like everyone else is satisfied with conversations that barely scratch the surface while your brain is trying to go 10 layers deeper. And the math makes it worse. Only 1 in 40 people share that level of cognitive ability, and even if you find someone equally intelligent, you still need compatible age, location, interests, availability. The pool of potential cognitive peers is vanishingly small. Which means most high IQ people spend their entire lives searching for their people and rarely finding them. This pattern starts in childhood. Gifted kids often struggle more with peer relationships than with academic work. They connect better with adults than with same-age peers, spend lunch breaks reading in the library instead of socializing. Not because they're antisocial, but because conversations with other kids feel painfully slow. Their minds are already 5 steps ahead while everyone else is still on step 1. Teachers and parents see a smart but weird kid. What they're actually seeing is someone whose brain is already operating at adult processing speeds while stuck in a child's social environment. And that creates a specific developmental problem. Social skills are largely built through practice, but if you spend your formative years avoiding peer interaction because it feels unstimulating, you miss critical windows for learning how to connect. You end up intellectually advanced but socially behind, which makes the loneliness worse as you get older. So why does this keep happening? Why can't high IQ people just learn to connect like everyone else? The answer is in how the brain itself is built. It isn't just faster, it's structurally different. Research measuring actual brain tissue found that high IQ individuals have larger neurons with longer, more complex dendrites. Dendrites are the branches connecting brain cells to each other. But here's the part that surprised neuroscientists. Despite having more complex individual neurons, high IQ brains have fewer total connections in the cerebral cortex. Not more connections, fewer. It's a lean, optimized network, what researchers call selective neural pruning. The brain eliminates unnecessary pathways and keeps only the most efficient routes. Think of it like 2 road systems. One has roads everywhere connecting everything. The other has fewer roads, but they're all highways. Less infrastructure, faster travel. And this shows up in brain scans. When high IQ people solve problems, their brains use less energy than average IQ people solving the same problems. PET imaging shows lower glucose metabolism during cognitive tasks. Psychologists call this the neural efficiency hypothesis. Your brain runs quieter, not louder. It's not working harder, it's working smarter. But efficiency has costs. That same optimized brain also processes emotional information more intensely. People with high IQ experience what psychologists call overexcitabilities, heightened sensitivity to stimuli that most people barely register. Sounds are louder, textures are more noticeable, emotional cues hit harder. Social interactions contain layers of subtext that most people don't even perceive. You're reading micro-expressions, tracking conversational patterns, predicting where discussions are heading, noticing inconsistencies in what people say versus what they mean. All of this happening automatically, while you're trying to just have a normal conversation. And then you're aware that you're doing all of this, which creates what psychologists call meta-cognitive processing. You're not just in the conversation, you're watching yourself have the conversation. analyzing your own performance in real time, which pulls you completely out of genuine connection. People with high IQ often report feeling like they're performing social interaction rather than naturally experiencing it. Every conversation becomes a cognitive task they're monitoring and optimizing, instead of just talking. The analytical brain that excels at problem solving treats human connection like a puzzle to solve, which doesn't work because emotions don't follow logical patterns. Some research suggests that high IQ and emotional intelligence aren't the same circuit. You can be brilliant at pattern recognition and terrible at reading emotional nuance. The brain that can analyze complex systems struggles with the messy, illogical nature of human feelings. And this creates real problems. High IQ individuals show higher rates of what psychologists call existential depression, not clinical depression from a chemical imbalance, depression that comes from thinking too deeply about meaning, purpose, mortality, the nature of existence. Most people don't spend hours contemplating the heat death of the universe or the fundamental meaninglessness of human endeavor. High IQ people can't stop thinking about it. Your brain generates questions faster than reality can provide answers, and sitting with unanswerable questions for extended periods is psychologically exhausting. Then there's perfectionism paralysis. When you can envision ideal outcomes with perfect clarity, reality becomes a constant disappointment. Every project gets measured against an impossible standard your brain generated. Studies found that high IQ individuals often set objectives so high that failure becomes inevitable, which creates chronic dissatisfaction even when they're objectively successful by any external measure. The brain that can see all possibilities also sees all the ways things could be better. Nothing is ever quite good enough. And society makes this worse by assuming intelligence equals easy success. People expect you to excel at everything. Teachers, parents, employers all project their expectations onto you based on your IQ score. But intelligence doesn't guarantee success. It doesn't even guarantee good grades. Many gifted students underperform in school because they're bored, disconnected, or so far ahead they've mentally checked out. A kid with an IQ of 140 sitting in a classroom designed for average students isn't challenged, they're imprisoned. The material moves too slowly, the explanations are too basic, the social environment feels intellectually suffocating. So they stop trying, get labeled as underachievers, lazy, not living up to potential, when the real problem is an environment that can't accommodate how their brain actually works. Which raises an obvious question. If high IQ creates all these problems, why does it exist at all? Well, because for most of human history, it wasn't a problem. Intelligence evolved as a survival advantage. Humans who could plan, predict, problem solve, and innovate outlived those who couldn't. But in modern society, we're not solving survival problems. We're navigating social hierarchies, emotional dynamics, cultural expectations, bureaucratic systems, problems that don't reward pure analytical thinking. The same cognitive wiring that helped our ancestors survive now makes their descendants feel alienated in a world designed for average intelligence. Research on intelligence and life satisfaction found something interesting. Up to a certain point, higher IQ correlates with better life outcomes, but past a threshold, around 120, 130, the correlation weakens or reverses. Not because intelligence becomes a disadvantage, but because the social isolation and emotional challenges start outweighing the cognitive benefits. Being slightly smarter than average gives you an edge. Being significantly smarter than average puts you in a different operating system that most people can't relate to. This is what researchers call the intelligence paradox. The very trait that should make everything easier can make genuine connection nearly impossible. And connection matters more than most people realize. Humans are social animals. We're wired for belonging. Isolation doesn't just feel bad. It has measurable physiological effects. Higher cortisol, worse immune function, increased inflammation. Your brilliant brain can't think its way out of the biological need for connection. But the pattern changes when high IQ individuals find their cognitive peers. When gifted adults connect with others at similar intellectual levels, their loneliness drops significantly. Life satisfaction increases. The chronic sense of being misunderstood finally lifts. It's not about being smarter than everyone, it's about finding people who process at your speed so conversation feels natural instead of exhausting. And that's possible. Difficult, statistically rare, but possible. High IQ people tend to cluster in specific environments, online communities built around niche interests, professional networks in specialized fields, academic settings, any space where thinking deeply is the norm, not the exception. The key is recognizing that you're not broken, your brain isn't malfunctioning, you're just operating at a frequency that requires intentional effort to find compatible signals. Intelligence isn't a social advantage, it's a social filter. It eliminates most potential connections automatically, which makes the few that work feel that much more valuable when you finally find them. So, if you're reading this and recognizing yourself, if you've ever felt like the smartest person in the room and simultaneously the loneliest, that's not a character flaw, that's neuroscience. Your efficient brain, your complex dendrites, your selective neural network, they're not problems to fix. They're just different wiring that requires different strategies for connection. Understanding how your brain works doesn't solve the loneliness, but it does explain why connection feels harder for you than it seems to be for everyone else. And sometimes understanding the pattern is the first step toward finding your people. Let me know in the comments if you've experienced this, and if this explains something about how your mind works. The next video breaks down another pattern you might recognize.